August 2nd, 1944, midnight. A lone American aircraft circled over central Serbia, German-occupied territory. A signal fire burned below in a mountain meadow near the village of Pranjani. The pilot spotted it, made his approach. 3 figures jumped into darkness. Parachutes opened, disappeared into the trees. Captain George Mussolini, 29 years old, Serbian-American. Born in New York, raised in Pennsylvania. Played college football at Pittsburgh. National champions, 1937. Then professional football. Chicago, St. Louis, Pittsburgh. Big guy. Tough. Spoke fluent Serbian. Office of Strategic Services, the OSS. America's wartime intelligence agency. Predecessor to the CIA. Master Sergeant Michael Rajacic. Radio operator. Also Serbian-American. Also spoke the language. Young, resourceful, expert with Morse code and shortwave transmitters. Specialist Arthur Jibilian, 21 years old, called Jibby by everyone. Communications expert, Lebanese-American from Ohio. Didn't speak Serbian, didn't matter. His job was keeping radio contact with Allied headquarters in Bari, Italy, 300 miles away across the Adriatic Sea. They landed hard in rough terrain, gathered their equipment, parachutes, radio gear, weapons, medical supplies. Within minutes, figures emerged from the forest. Armed men, bearded, worn uniforms. Chetniks, Serbian guerrilla fighters loyal to General Draza Mihailovic. The Americans were taken to a farmhouse. Mihailovic was waiting. 51 years old, gray beard, sharp eyes. Former Royal Yugoslav Army colonel, now commander of the Chetnik resistance, fighting Germans since Yugoslavia fell in 1941. 3 years of brutal occupation. His men controlled pockets of Serbian countryside. The Germans controlled the cities, roads, and rail lines. Mihailovic spoke through an interpreter. "Your men are safe, all of them. We have done everything possible." Mussolini looked around the room. "How many?" 250, maybe more, scattered across the hills. We are gathering them here. 250 American airmen, shot down over Yugoslavia, rescued by Serbian peasants and Chetnik fighters, hidden from German patrols for weeks, some for months, waiting for extraction, waiting to go home. This was Operation Halyard, the largest rescue of Allied airmen in World War II history, and it almost didn't happen. 6 weeks earlier, late June 1944, 15th Air Force Headquarters, Bari, Italy. Lieutenant Colonel George Krager reviewed intelligence reports. American bombers had been flying missions over Romania for months, targeting Ploiesti oil fields, Hitler's primary fuel source. The raids were devastating Nazi petroleum production, but the cost was staggering. Ploiesti was 1,500 miles round trip from Italy. The route crossed Yugoslavia, German-occupied, crawling with anti-aircraft batteries and Luftwaffe fighters. Dozens of American bombers were being shot down every week. B-24 Liberators, B-17 Flying Fortresses. Each carried 10 crew members, pilots, navigators, bombardiers, gunners, engineers. When a plane went down, survivors bailed out. If they survived the jump. If their parachutes opened. If they weren't shot during descent. They landed in enemy territory. The Germans usually captured them within hours, sent them to POW camps, Stalag Luft 3, Stalag 17B, if they were lucky. If they weren't, local collaborators turned them over to the Gestapo, or SS units executed them on site, reprisal for bombing German cities. But intelligence was receiving reports, coded messages from occupied Yugoslavia. American airmen were being hidden by local Serbs, dozens of them, maybe more, protected by Chetnik forces, General Mihailovic's men. The problem was political. Britain had supported Mihailovic early in the war, sent liaison officers, weapons, supplies, but by 1944, British policy had shifted. Winston Churchill now backed Josip Broz Tito, communist partisan leader, Croatian, Moscow trained. The British believed Tito was fighting Germans more aggressively than Mihailovic. Churchill cut off support to the Chetniks, ordered British missions withdrawn, pressured America to do the same. Washington followed London's lead. President Roosevelt trusted Churchill's judgment on Balkan affairs. American liaison officers were pulled out of Mihailovich's territory in May 1944. The general was left isolated. No Allied support, no weapons, no recognition. Just his men and the Serbian peasants who supported him. But the downed American airmen were still there, hidden in Serbian villages, waiting for rescue. The 15th Air Force couldn't abandon them. Someone had to go in. Someone had to organize an evacuation. Someone had to risk everything. George Musulin volunteered. He had been in Yugoslavia before, October 1943. Parachuted in with an American mission to Mihailovich's headquarters. Spent months with the Chetniks. Saw firsthand how they treated Allied airmen. With respect, protection, generosity. Serbian villagers shared food they didn't have, hid airmen in barns, cellars, and attics, risked execution if discovered. Entire villages could be burned, men shot, women and children deported to labor camps. Musulin returned to Italy in May 1944 with 40 rescued airmen, evacuated by British aircraft just before Allied missions withdrew. In Bari, he filed reports, debriefings, recommendations. He told his superiors the truth. Mihailovich was still rescuing Americans, still protecting them, still waiting for Allied support that would never come. We need to get those men out, Musulin argued. Mihailovich's people are risking everything. The Germans know Americans are being hidden there. They're increasing patrols, conducting sweeps. It's only a matter of time before they find them. His commanders agreed, but the British opposed the operation. Too politically sensitive. Supporting Mihailovich would anger Tito, complicate Allied relations with Yugoslav partisans. The Americans needed British cooperation. British aircraft, British logistics support in Italy. Musulin bypassed the chain of command, went directly to OSS Director General William Wild Bill Donovan, laid out the situation. 250 American airmen trapped behind enemy lines, Allies unwilling to help because of politics. Men would die because of bureaucracy. Donovan took the case to President Roosevelt, explained the situation. American boys shot down over Europe, rescued by Serbian peasants, hidden from the Germans, waiting for their country to save them. Politics be damned. Roosevelt approved the mission, ordered the British to cooperate. Churchill's government agreed, reluctantly. Operation Halyard was authorized, but the clock was ticking. German intelligence knew Allied airmen were in Serbia, increased patrols, offered rewards for information, threatened reprisals against villages suspected of hiding Americans, and Tito's communist partisans were closing in on Mihailovich's territory. The civil war within the war. Tito wanted to eliminate his rivals before Germany collapsed. If partisans reached Pranjani before the Americans evacuated, the airmen would become hostages, bargaining chips in Yugoslavia's brutal internal conflict. Musulin assembled his team. Rajacic and Jabilian, both volunteers, both understood the risks. They would jump into occupied Serbia, link up with Mihailovich, organize the airmen, build a makeshift airstrip, coordinate with 15th Air Force for evacuation flights, all while avoiding German patrols and partisan forces, and keeping 250 scared, exhausted, injured American airmen alive and hidden. The first attempt failed. July 15, 1944. Aircraft malfunction. Mission aborted. Second attempt. July 20th. Weather. Thick clouds over the Balkans. No visibility. Turned back. Third attempt. July 28th. Navigation error. Wrong coordinates. Pilot couldn't find the signal fire. Circled for an hour. Too dangerous to jump blind. Returned to Italy. Musulin was furious. Every day increased risk. Every delay gave Germans more time to find the airmen. Every postponement lowered morale among the men waiting in the mountains. Fourth attempt. August 2nd, 1944. Perfect weather. Clear skies. Accurate navigation. Signal fire visible from miles away. Musulin, Rajacic, and Jabilian jumped at midnight. Landed safely. made contact with Chetniks within minutes, reached Mihailovich's headquarters by dawn. The general greeted them with relief. "Your men are ready. We have been waiting." Mussolini surveyed the situation. More than 250 airmen. Some walked in on their own after being shot down. Others were brought in by Chetnik escorts. Serbian villagers risked everything transporting Americans through German checkpoints, disguised as peasants, hidden in wagons under hay and potatoes, carried through forests at night. The airmen were exhausted, scared, many injured from bailouts and crash landings, burns, broken bones, shrapnel wounds. Chetnik medics did what they could with limited supplies. Serbian families shared what little food they had: bread, goat milk, plum brandy, the local rakia, strong stuff. It kept morale up. But time was running out. A German garrison was stationed at Kachak, 20 miles southeast. Luftwaffe airfield, fighter planes, reconnaissance aircraft. If Germans spotted evacuation operations, they would scramble fighters, strafe the airstrip, attack transport planes. Everyone would die. And there was another problem: the terrain. Central Serbia was mountainous, heavily forested, no flat ground for landing aircraft. Transport planes needed at least 600 yards of clear, level runway, preferably more. The area around Pranjani had nothing like that. Mihailovich's solution was ingenious and desperate. Build a runway, by hand, using peasants with axes, shovels, and oxen. Clear trees. Level ground. Compact earth. Create a functional airstrip in the middle of enemy-occupied wilderness, without heavy equipment, without engineers, without time. "Can it be done?" Mussolini asked. Mihailovich smiled. "It will be done. My people have survived worse." Hundreds of Serbian villagers went to work, men, women, and children, cutting trees, pulling stumps, hauling rocks, smoothing dirt, compacting ground, building an airstrip from nothing, in occupied territory, while German patrols searched the hills, while partisan scouts watched from a distance, while 250 American airmen waited for salvation that might never come. August 5th, 1944, dawn. The airstrip at Pranjani was taking shape, 600 yards long, 40 yards wide, carved from wilderness by hand. Serbian men swinging axes, women hauling rocks, children carrying buckets of dirt, oxen pulling stumps from the ground. Everyone worked. No one rested. Captain Nikola Verkic supervised construction. Engineer, former Royal Yugoslav Army officer, now Chetnik. He measured distances by pacing, checked levels by eye. No surveying equipment, no blueprints, just experience and desperation. The runway had to be flat enough for landing, strong enough to support 15-ton aircraft, long enough for takeoff with a full load of passengers. The Germans were 20 miles away. Patrols searched the hills daily. Reconnaissance flights crossed the area regularly. Any sign of unusual activity would trigger an investigation. Wehrmacht troops, SS units, Gestapo interrogators. The consequences would be catastrophic. Mass executions, villages burned, everyone involved killed. So the Serbs worked at night. Lanterns shielded, voices hushed. When German planes flew over during the day, villagers herded livestock onto the airstrip, made it look like a pasture, cows grazing, sheep wandering. Just farmers tending fields, nothing suspicious. George Mussolini watched the progress, impressed, concerned. The runway was almost ready, but coordination with Italy was complicated, radio communication unreliable, weather unpredictable, German air patrols constant, and the airmen kept arriving, more than 250 now, scattered in villages throughout the region. First Lieutenant Richard Fellman, B-24 bombardier, shot down in April 1944, injured during bailout, rescued by Serbian peasants, hidden in a barn for 2 months. Second Lieutenant Nick Petrovich, B-17 tail gunner, Serbian-American from Chicago, spoke the language, helped translate for other airmen. Staff Sergeant Tony Orsini, radio operator, New York, Italian-American, Brooklyn accent thick as concrete. The stories were similar. Flying bombing missions to Ploesti, anti-aircraft fire, flak, engines hit, fire, Bailout, parachutes opening, landing in mountains. Not knowing where they were, not knowing if they'd be captured or killed. Then Serbian villagers appeared, old men, women, children, offering help, food, shelter, safety. Despite the risks, despite German threats, despite certain death if discovered. One airman landed in a field near Takovo. A Serbian farmer found him, took him home, fed him, hid him in a cellar. The farmer's wife gave him civilian clothes. His daughter brought water and bread daily. The family had nothing, but they shared everything. Another airman, badly burned, was carried 20 miles through mountains by Chetnik fighters, to a doctor, a Serbian physician who treated him without anesthesia, without proper medical supplies, used homemade bandages, plum brandy for disinfection, prayers for healing. The generosity was staggering. Serbia was under brutal occupation, food scarce, resources limited. Punishment for aiding allies was execution. Entire families killed, villages destroyed. Yet thousands of Serbs risked everything to save Americans they'd never met. Muslin understood the pressure. Every day increased risk. Every new airman raised the stakes. If Germans discovered the operation before evacuation began, everyone would die. 500 people. Americans, Serbs, Chetniks, all executed. He radioed Bari, 15th Air Force Headquarters. Captain George Krager received the message. Airstrip ready. 250 plus awaiting evacuation. Advise. Krager coordinated with Bomber Command, C-47 transport planes, Douglas Skytrain, workhorse of Allied logistics, could carry 25 passengers. Needed 600 yards minimum for takeoff, on a good runway, on flat ground, with full power. Pranjani was not a good runway. It was dirt, uneven, surrounded by trees, boxed in by mountains. Landing would be dangerous, takeoff suicidal, especially loaded with passengers. But there was no alternative. The airmen couldn't walk out. Too far. Too many injured. German patrols everywhere. Tito's partisans closing in. If the communists reached Pranjani first, the airmen would become hostages, pawns in Yugoslavia's civil war. The evacuation was scheduled for August 9th, 1944. Night operation. 4 C-47s. Fly in, land, load passengers, take off, return to Italy. Simple plan. Insanely dangerous execution. But August 8th brought a problem. German reconnaissance flights increased. Luftwaffe spotter planes, observing the area, circling, taking photos. They'd seen something, or suspected something. Either way, the operation was compromised. Mihailovich made a decision. Release the livestock, cows, sheep, goats, drive them onto the airstrip, let them graze. Make it look natural. The Germans flew over at noon, saw animals, saw farmers, saw nothing unusual. They left. Midnight approached. The airmen assembled, 255 men. Americans mostly, some British, a few French. They'd been briefed. Keep quiet. Stay hidden until the last moment. Board quickly, no luggage, no souvenirs, just themselves. Serbian families gathered, saying goodbye. Emotional, tearful. They'd risked everything for these men. Fed them, sheltered them, protected them, treated them like sons. Now they were leaving. One elderly Serbian woman hugged an American pilot, kissed his cheeks, pressed a piece of bread into his hands for the journey. He tried to refuse. She insisted, "Take, you will need." A young Serbian girl gave her scarf to a bombardier. "Remember us," she said in broken English. He promised he would. August 9th, 1944. 0130 hours. The sound of aircraft engines. Distant. Growing louder. 4 C-47s approaching from the south, flying without lights. Navigation by starlight and radio beacon. Arthur Jabilian transmitted final coordinates, guided them in. Signal fires lit on both ends of the runway. Dim, just bright enough to mark the approach. The first C-47 descended. Pilot saw the fires, lined up, dropped altitude, cleared the trees by 20 feet. Wheels touched dirt, bounced, settled. Engines roared in reverse thrust, stopped at the end of the runway, spun around, ready for takeoff. Second C-47. Same approach. Rough landing. Stopped. Turned. Third C-47. Fourth C-47. All four down. Engines idling. Side doors opened. Crews jumped out. Load up! Move! Go! The airmen ran, climbed aboard, packed in tight. 25 per plane. No seats. Sit on the floor. Stand. Hold on to cargo straps. Just get inside. Serbian villagers swarmed the aircraft, saying goodbye, hugging, crying. American airmen leaned out the doors, unlacing their boots, pulling them off, tossing them to Serbian families. Dozens of boots, flying through the air, landing in the dirt, Serbs picking them up. Most had no shoes, wore felt slippers, handmade, worn through. American combat boots were treasures, gifts, payment, gratitude. The scene was chaos, beautiful chaos, tears, laughter, shouting, embraces, Americans waving, Serbs waving back. Then the doors closed, engines powered up. Time to go. First C-47 rolled forward, picked up speed. Faster, faster, trees ahead. Pilot pulled back, nose lifted. Barely cleared the treetops, branches scraping the belly. But airborne, safe, climbing, turning west, heading for Italy. Second plane, same, close call, cleared by feet. Third plane, fourth plane, all up, all safe. 100 airmen evacuated. First night complete. Dawn, August 10th, 1944. More C-47s incoming. 12 planes this time. Daylight operation. Riskier. Germans would see them, but more efficient, faster loading, better visibility for pilots. American P-51 Mustang fighters escorted the transports. 50 fighters. 8th Air Force, screaming overhead at low altitude, peeling off, strafing German garrisons, creating diversions, drawing attention away from progeny, buying time. The transports landed, one after another. Perfect formation. No crashes, no accidents. Loaded quickly. Serbian families again saying goodbye. More boots thrown from aircraft, more tears, more gratitude. 241 airmen evacuated in 2 days. Over 450 total, still waiting. The operation continued. August 12th, 4 more planes. August 15th, 6 planes. August 18th, 3 planes. Every few days, more evacuations, more rescues, more emotional farewells. But pressure was mounting. German intelligence suspected something. Increased patrols, closer surveillance, Luftwaffe fighters probing the area. And Tito's partisans were advancing, pushing east, closing in on Chetnik territory. Time was running out. Richard Fellman remembered the moment he climbed aboard his evacuation flight. August 27th. He turned to the Serbian family that had hidden him for 4 months, the farmer, his wife, their daughter. He tried to thank them. Words failed. What do you say to people who risked execution to save your life? The farmer shook his hand. Go home. Live. Be happy. That is thanks enough. Fellman climbed aboard, watched through the window as the C-47 lifted off, saw the villagers waving, saw progeny disappear below, saw Serbia fade into the horizon. He would never forget. None of them would. By September 5th, 1944, Operation Halyard had evacuated over 400 airmen from progeny, but more remained, scattered, hiding, waiting. New airstrips were built. Kocheljeva, Boljanic, deep in Chetnik territory, further from German lines, safer, hopefully. September 17th, Kocheljeva airstrip. More evacuations, more rescues, more gratitude. The operation expanded, changed, adapted, as the war shifted, as Allied armies advanced, as Yugoslavia's civil war intensified. George Mussolini left Serbia on August 29th, replaced by Captain Nick Lawlich, another OSS officer. The mission continued under new command. The rescues continued. The risk continued. But so did the determination. Americans wouldn't abandon their men. Serbs wouldn't abandon their honor. And hundreds of airmen owed their lives to both. December 27, 1944. The last evacuation flight. 20 airmen lifted from Bojanic airstrip. The final mission of Operation Halyard. In total, 512 Allied personnel rescued. 432 Americans, 80 others. British, French, Italians, Russians, all pulled from German-occupied Serbia. All saved by Serbian peasants and Chetnik fighters. All brought home alive. The statistics were staggering. Largest rescue of downed Allied airmen in World War II history. 6 months of operations, multiple airstrips, hundreds of evacuation flights. Not a single aircraft lost to enemy action. Not a single rescuer killed during evacuations. A miracle of coordination, courage, and sacrifice. George Vujnovic coordinated the entire operation from Bari, Italy. Serbian-American OSS officer. Born in Pittsburgh to Serbian immigrants. Educated at University of Belgrade. When Germany invaded Yugoslavia in 1941, he fled with his wife Mirjana. Budapest, Istanbul, Cairo, eventually Ghana. Then recruited by OSS, sent to Italy, assigned to Yugoslav operations. In summer 1944, Vujnovic learned about downed American airmen hiding in Serbia. Protected by Mihailovic's forces, he conceived Operation Halyard, trained the agents. George Mussolini, Michael Rajacic, Arthur Jibilian taught them how to blend in, tie shoes the Serbian way. Small details, critical details. The operation succeeded because of his planning, his coordination, his determination to bring American boys home. Richard Fellman never forgot, the B-24 bombardier who spent 4 months hidden in a Serbian barn. After returning to America, he wrote letters, made phone calls, testified before Congress, told everyone who would listen about Serbian heroism, about families who risked execution to save strangers, about General Mihailovic's Chetniks protecting American lives. He wasn't alone. Hundreds of rescued airmen returned home with stories, gratitude, loyalty. They formed associations, veteran groups, dedicated to honoring the Serbs who saved them, dedicated to remembering Operation Halyard, dedicated to correcting history, because history betrayed Raja Mihailovic. After the war ended, Yugoslavia fell to communist control. Josip Broz Tito took power. Moscow backed, Stalin approved. The Chetniks were branded traitors, collaborators, war criminals. All lies, but repeated enough times to become accepted truth. Mihailovic went into hiding. March 1946. Communist forces captured him, brought to Belgrade, show trial, accused of treason, war crimes, collaboration with Germans. None of it true, but truth didn't matter. Tito wanted him dead. Stalin wanted him dead. The verdict was predetermined. American airmen tried to help, sent letters to President Truman, to Congress, to State Department, testified that Mihailovic saved their lives, protected them, fought Germans, risked everything for Allied personnel. 512 rescued airmen. Proof of his loyalty, proof of his courage. The American government did nothing. Britain did nothing. Politics, Cold War. Yugoslavia was communist now. Mihailovic represented the old order, the monarchy, anti-communist resistance. Supporting him would anger Stalin, complicate Allied relations with Tito's government. So they abandoned him. July 15, 1946. Belgrade. Military court pronounced sentence. Death. Mihailovic showed no emotion. He knew it was coming. He'd known since capture. His only request, that the world remember his people, the Serbian peasants, the villagers, the fighters, who saved Allied lives, who risked everything, who asked for nothing in return. July 17, 1946. Dawn. Mihailovic was executed by firing squad. 53 years old. Body buried in unmarked grave. Location unknown to this day. Communist authorities destroyed records, erased evidence, made him disappear, as if he never existed. But he did exist, and 512 Allied airmen never forgot. They lobbied for decades, petitioned governments, testified, protested. Finally, January 1948, President Truman posthumously awarded Mihailovich the Legion of Merit, America's highest military decoration for foreigners, Chief Commander degree, for organizing and leading resistance forces, for rescuing Allied personnel, for demonstrating courage and loyalty. The award was classified, secret, kept hidden for 20 years. American government didn't want to offend Yugoslavia's communist regime, didn't want to anger Tito, so they honored a hero in silence, gave him a medal no one could see, recognition no one could acknowledge. Not until 1967 was the award made public. Richard Fellman and other rescued airmen attended the ceremony. Finally, 21 years after Mihailovich's execution, finally his heroism was recognized, his sacrifice acknowledged, his memory honored. But Serbia still suffered. The villages that helped, the families that risked everything, they received nothing. No compensation, no recognition, no thanks from American government, just memories, and the knowledge that they did the right thing, even when it cost them everything. In 2015, Serbian courts annulled Mihailovich's conviction, declared the 1946 trial unfair, political, a communist show trial with predetermined verdict. The judge emphasized they weren't ruling on whether Mihailovich was a war criminal, only that he didn't receive fair trial. But everyone knew the truth. He wasn't a criminal. He was a hero, murdered for saving Allied lives. Today, monuments stand in Serbia. Pranjani, Boljanic, Kočeljeva, commemorating Operation Halyard, honoring the villagers, the Chetniks, the OSS agents, the pilots who risked everything to evacuate airmen from behind enemy lines. American veterans visit, elderly now, in their 90s, some in wheelchairs. They come to Serbia, to the villages where they hid, to the fields where they were rescued. They hug elderly Serbs, grandchildren of the families who saved them, cry together, remember together. 75 years later, still grateful, still loyal, still brothers. George Muselin returned to America after the war, continued intelligence work, never forgot Serbia, died in 1987, buried with honors. His legacy? 512 lives saved, Operation Halyard, the mission he commanded, the Americans he brought home. Arthur Jabilian, the radio operator, the youngest member, returned to Ohio, lived quiet life, Silver Star recipient, died in 2007, remembered as hero, the man who guided planes through darkness, who kept radio contact, who made evacuation possible. George Voinovich, the mastermind, the coordinator, returned to New York after the war, worked for airline companies, mild-mannered businessman. Neighbors never knew he'd organized history's largest airman rescue. Never bragged, never sought attention. Died in 2012, age 96. Bronze Star, Legion of Merit. Remembered by those who knew the truth. And the rescued airmen. 512 men. They lived, came home, raised families, built careers, lived full lives. Because Serbian peasants shared bread they didn't have. Because Chetnik fighters risked execution. Because General Mihailovich chose honor over safety. Operation Halyard remains mostly forgotten, not taught in schools, not mentioned in most World War II histories, overshadowed by D-Day, Stalingrad, the atomic bomb. But to 512 men, and their children, and grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, it was everything. Because without Operation Halyard, those men would have died, captured, executed, lost. Their families would never have existed. Thousands of descendants alive today because Serbian villagers chose courage, because American agents chose duty, because Allied governments chose rescue over politics, at least for those 6 months. This is the story they want you to remember, not just the military operation, not just the statistics, but the humanity, the generosity, the sacrifice. Serbian families with nothing giving everything. American agents risking everything to bring boys home. Allied pilots landing in impossible conditions to save lives. 512 men walked out of enemy territory alive. against impossible odds, through brutal occupation, because some people still believed in doing the right thing, even when it cost them their lives, even when history would forget, even when the world would betray them. That is Operation Halyard, the greatest rescue mission of World War II, the forgotten miracle, the story that must never be forgotten. If this story of courage and sacrifice moved you, we'd be honored if you'd like this video and share it with someone who appreciates real history. These stories matter. These heroes deserve to be remembered. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next documentary about the untold stories of World War II. Stories of ordinary people who did extraordinary things. Stories that changed history. And in the comments, tell us, do you have family members who served in World War II? Do you know anyone who was part of Operation Halyard? We'd love to hear their stories. Let's keep these memories alive together. Thank you for watching.